Ever finish a board game and feel like you spent the whole time just watching? Like your choices didn't even matter.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like, what was the point of even playing?
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. Those frustrating kingmaker situations. You're out of the running, but you still get to decide who wins, which, let's be honest, can feel super unfair.
Totally. We're talking about those mechanics that make you question why you even like board games in the first place.
For real. But before we get into the thick of it, what even is a kingmaker scenario? I feel like everyone's got their own definition.
Well, lucky for us, Wikipedia actually has a pretty solid explanation.
No way, Wikipedia coming in clutch for once. You love to see it.
So what's the official verdict?
Basically, it's when a player, and this usually happens in games with at least 3 players, has 0 chance of winning themselves. But they can still determine who does win.
Okay, so it's not just that you're losing, it's that you're losing in a way that makes you the puppet master of the entire game. Exactly. And they have this example, the gladiator arena, that perfectly illustrates it. Imagine 3 gladiators, each with different skill levels. Let's say ranked 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, got it. Classic arena showdown about to go down.
Right, so each round, 2 gladiators fight. Losers out, obviously. Seems simple enough, but here's the catch. The gladiator who gets to choose their opponent first basically decides the entire outcome.
Wait, really? How so?
Think about it. If you're the gladiator with skill level 3, you're absolutely picking your opponent in that first fight.
Yeah, because you want to go up against the weakest one to survive, right?
Exactly. But by making that choice, you're essentially handing the win to whoever's left standing after you inevitably lose.
Whoa, that's kind of mind-blowing. So even though you're the weakest, you have all this power in a roundabout way.
Exactly. It flips the whole idea of being the best on its head. Suddenly, being strategically weak can be its own weird advantage.
That's wild. And then you know this kind of thing is probably a huge debate in the board game world, right? People love arguing about this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where our Reddit thread comes in. We asked listeners about the mechanics that make them rage quit a game, and let me tell you, people did not hold back.
Oh, I bet. So what were some of the top contenders for most rage-inducing mechanics?
Player elimination was a big one, which makes sense when you think about it.
Oh, for sure. Nothing like getting knocked out early and then having to watch everyone else have fun for the next 3 hours.
Right. It goes back to that feeling of having no agency. You're eliminated, so your choices don't matter anymore. You're just there.
It's like being the ghost at a party, haunting everyone with your boredom.
Laughing, exactly.
But some games handle elimination way better than others, right? Like, I've heard good things about how King of Tokyo deals with it.
King of Tokyo is a great example. What they do is offer a secondary way to win, a point race. So even if you're out of the running for the main objective, you still have a goal.
Oh, that's smart. It's like, okay, you're not the King of Tokyo anymore, but you can still be the most popular.
Laughing, something like that. But the point is, you still have something to strive for. Your choices still matter, even if you're technically out of the running.
That's a really good point. It's all about making sure players feel like they have agency, like they can actually impact the game, even if things aren't going their way.
Exactly, because when a game takes that away from you, it just feels bad. And that's where this whole idea of the illusion of choice comes into play.
Ooh, okay, so what's the deal with the illusion of choice? Sounds kind of ominous.
It definitely can be. This Medium article we found really breaks it down well. Talks about how frustrating it is when a game seems to offer you these meaningful choices, but the outcome is basically already decided.
Okay, I'm already getting frustrated just thinking about that. It's like those choose-your-own-adventure books where every path leads to the same ending.
Right. And the article actually uses the game of life as an example, which I thought was perfect.
Okay.
You're making all these choices like what career to pursue, if you'll get married, how to invest your money.
Yeah, you're building this whole life narrative in your head. You're like, this choice right here, this is going to make all the difference.
And then bam, the spinner lands on you win the lottery, or you get audited by the IRS, and suddenly all those choices you agonized over, totally meaningless.
It's like the game just goes, nope, fate has other plans for you, buddy.
Exactly. And that disconnect between what we think our choices should achieve and what they actually achieve, that's what creates that frustrating illusion of choice.
And it's not just about feeling like your choices don't matter, right? Sometimes a mechanic just feels like a slap in the face, even if you're winning.
Oh, 100%. The Reddit thread was full of complaints about mechanics that just feel bad to play with, even if they're technically balanced.
Yeah, like that one card that just ruins the entire flow of the game. Speaking of which, someone mentioned the Catan robber as a prime example. I gotta say, I get it.
The Catan robber is interesting because it highlights how a mechanic can be thematically relevant, but still incredibly frustrating from a gameplay perspective.
Oh, totally. Like, yeah, getting rogged makes sense in the context of the game, but when it happens 3 turns in a row.
Especially when you've got the perfect strategy planned out. You're just waiting for that one resource.
And then, boom, robber steals all your sheep. Game over. Thanks for playing.
It really undermines that feeling that your skill as a player matters. You can do everything right and still get totally hosed by random roll.
Exactly. And that's not fun. It feels like the game's actively working against you, not with you.
Right. A well-designed game should make you feel like you're in a conversation with the mechanics, like you're working together to create an interesting story. When it feels like the game's just out to get you.
That's when you start flipping the table and storming out.
Right.
Or maybe that's just me.
We've all been there. But seriously, it's about finding that balance between challenge and fairness. A good game should push you, make you think strategically, but it shouldn't feel like it's deliberately trying to make you lose.
Right, you want to feel like you earned your victory, not like you just got lucky.
Exactly. And that's something designers are always grappling with. How to create a game that's challenging, but not punishing. Strategic, but not overly complex. It's a tough balance to strike.
For sure. It's like walking a tightrope between fun and frustration. But when a designer gets it right, when all the elements come together in that perfect way.
That's when you get those truly magical gaming experiences, the ones you remember for years to come.
Absolutely. Those games that remind you why you fell in love with board games in the first place. You know what really makes or breaks a game for me? The rulebook.
Oh yeah, for sure. The rulebook can make it or break it.
A good rulebook is like having a personal tour guide for a new city.
And a bad one is like trying to read a map written in a language you don't even know.
Exactly. You end up spending the whole game arguing about what the rules actually mean instead of, actually playing.
Oh, tell me about it. The Reddit thread was filled with people complaining about rulebooks that read like they were written by a team of lawyers.
Right. Like a good rule book should be clear, concise, easy to understand. You should be able to just pick it up and go.
Exactly. It's like you shouldn't need a PhD in game design just to figure out how to set up the board.
And a well-written rule book should anticipate your questions before you even ask them.
Totally. It's like the designer should be thinking, okay, what are people going to be confused about? Let me head that off at the pass.
Right. It's all about making the game as accessible and enjoyable as possible. You want people to spend their time having fun, not scratching their heads trying to decipher obscure clauses.
Absolutely. And it's something that I think more and more designers are starting to realize.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing so many games now with companion apps or online tutorials or whatever.
I love those. It's like having a personal game master right there with you, walking you through everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just makes the whole experience so much smoother and more enjoyable.
For sure. Because at the end of the day, we're here to play games, not decipher ancient scrolls.
Right. Games should be challenging, sure, but that challenge should come from the gameplay itself, not from trying to figure out what the heck the rulebook is even trying to say.
Well said. Speaking of challenges, I think it's important to talk about player expectations, too.
Oh, totally. Expectations can make or break a game, no doubt.
Because sometimes the most frustrating experiences come from going into a game expecting one thing and getting something completely different.
Right. Like you pick up a game called Cute Kittens in Space, and you're expecting, I don't know, something lighthearted and whimsical.
And it turns out to be this hardcore economic simulation where you're managing trade routes and battling space pirates.
Exactly. And suddenly you're like, wait, this isn't what I signed up for?
It's all about setting the right expectations from the start. Like, designers need to be upfront about what kind of game they're making. Is it a light party game, a heavy strategy epic?
Right, because when you know what you're getting into, you can appreciate the game for what it is.
Exactly. And you're less likely to be disappointed when it turns out you're not actually battling cute kittens in space.
Although now that you mention it, that actually does sound like a fun game.
Maybe we should pitch that one. But for now, let's wrap things up. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We really have. We talked about those frustrating kingmaker scenarios, dove into the psychology of why certain mechanics make us want to flip the table, and even explored the art of the rulebook.
And through it all, I think the main takeaway is this. A well-designed game is a conversation between the designer and the players.
Totally. It's about creating an experience that's both challenging and rewarding, engaging and thought-provoking.
And most importantly, it's about having fun. So the next time you sit down for a game night, take a moment to appreciate the thought and care that went into crafting that experience.
And don't be afraid to let your voice be heard. If a mechanic is driving you crazy, talk about it. Let designers know what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, games are a collaborative art form. We're all in this together. And with that in mind, we'll leave you with this final thought. What's the one board game mechanic that makes you say, nope, not playing that? Share your thoughts with us on social media using #TheDeepDive. Until next time, game on.